Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It.
I've talked to Councilmember Watson about a lot of the initiatives that the city is trying to work with the IT department on the county level about, and she's had the opportunity to meet with our city IT department on some of the ideas that we're proposing to the county on other innovative ways that we can think about fixing or investing in our infrastructure with some of the other funding vehicles that are out there. The other thing that I wanted to mention, so that's some of the things that the city can do. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I do meet with our state highway district and District 3 engineer. Erica was previously in that role. Now Derek Gunn is in that role. I do have a meeting with him on November 9th. And so I try to make sure that I stay updated or that I'm amplifying, because I represent District 4 and we're thinking about going after, understand how traffic patterns are evolving in real time. There are a number of different grant opportunities that are available at the federal level that are funding different improvement projects for infrastructure. But in order for us to be in a more appropriate posture to aggressively go after those grants, we need better access to real-time data that's really telling the story of the evolution and the essential pressure that's being put on our roads so that we can go after some of those grants more aggressively. So I do want this audience to know that is something that Prince George's County is thinking about and working on proactively. However, it just takes a little bit of time to get there because some of these are more innovative technologies where they're not a standard practice, yes, across the board in different county areas. So I think that once we're able to essentially invest more in those areas, we'll be able to have this data to really aggressively go after some of these federal grants, to really ease some of the burden on some of the things that we're talking about. Because when you think about the requirements around some of these federal grants, they're very strenuous. Like, they need a lot of data to corroborate exactly what we're asking for, a lot of reporting back. So a lot of that is also human capital as well. And so it is something that we're thinking about. It is something that we're working in unison about. We're working in unison on. I know I've talked to Councilmember Watson about a lot of the initiatives that the city is trying to work with the IT department on the county level about, and she's had the opportunity to meet with our city IT department on some of the ideas that we're proposing to the county on other innovative ways that we can think about fixing or investing in our infrastructure with some of the other funding vehicles that are out there. The other thing that I wanted to mention, so that's some of the things that the city can do. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I do meet with our state highway district and District 3 engineer. Erica was previously in that role. Now Derek Gunn is in that role. I do have a meeting with him on November 9th. And so I try to make sure that I stay updated or that I'm amplifying, because I represent District 4 and District 4 does border 301 corridor as well as District 3. So we try to make sure that we are amplifying, that we're understanding how State Highway is thinking about things and what are the complexities, the nuances, and the trade-offs that are involved, so that the city understands how we need to advocate or work with our county partners or our state elected officials to really get that message across, so we have a united front and we're saying things in unison to be able to achieve results. And so if there are any things that are ever on your mind, you can always reach out to me. My cell phone number is public. It's 202-733-8442. That is actually my real phone number. And if you have any suggestions or anything, I know a lot of people reach out to me about the trash on 301. So we work very closely. They're on a 3-week rotation picking up trash on 301, 214. And so essentially, if there are any other things that we're not thinking about or that you haven't heard mentioned here, you can always suggest those to us and we will take that forward in the meetings and advocate for those as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd like to hear just a short statement from our Vice Chair, County Council Wildwood Gay's representative, Ms. January McKay. And then we'll go to the audience because I know you're dying to ask questions.
Good evening, thank you. So I'm here representing the District 6 office for Vice Chair Wildwood Gay, and I just wanted to let you know I was hoping to be able to introduce Mrs. Cecily Johnson, who was here but had to leave. She is one of the chairs for our traffic calming committee, which the vice chair did implement. And what that committee does is they work to determine areas of traffic concerns in the county, especially within District 6, and propose creative safety measures to resolve those concerns. And so if that is something that you are interested in participating on, you can please see me afterwards and I can make sure that you are connected with that committee. In addition to DPWT, the Department of Public Works and Transportation, they have a packet, hopefully you all are aware, but if you're not, they have a packet online that if there are any traffic concerns in your community where you would like a study done so that there can be speed bumps or anything placed in your community, you can do that through your HOA. And if that's something that you're interested in getting more information on, you can see me afterwards and I'll share that information with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKay, representing Wallabugay. Okay, Rhonda, we're going to have you. This is Rhonda Billingsley, our treasurer, and she's going to go this way. She's going to bring the microphone. I want to thank all of you for coming to this, because it's a very important subject. Okay. So raise your hand if you'd like to pose a question. In the back, we have two people, and in front, we have one. You might have to come forward.
You may have to come this way. I apologize. I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Elise Johnson. I live in District 4. Come closer? Okay. And we're talking about possibly widening 301 in some places, but if there are signs, let's say, for instance, from NAI Michael, who they, I guess, own a lot of land in the county, but they've got signs along 301, let's say 214 to Rips, like across from Quips, the car wash, yeah. So if we're talking about widening the road, but they want to yet sell the land and build things in the median or on that forestry side, on the right-hand side heading north, how does that work? It's going to be super congested. That's just my concern. Because, of course, no one's really talking about that land is for sale. It's for sale. What's going to go there? They probably want businesses or... Okay, that's my question.
So just a brief comment. If a needed improvement is being impacted by right-of-way that's being used or owned by someone else, then the developer may be required to make a good faith offer to the landowner to acquire the right-of-way. If the landowner refuses to sell for whatever reason he or she, has, then that's where, if a project is on the priority list, then the county may ask the state to use eminent domain to acquire the right-of-way. But obviously, before you go that far, it has to be a project that has a great deal of, public need in order for that option to be pursued.
If I may just follow up on that, like an example of that I just want to make clear, hi Ms. Johnson, thank you so much for the question, that I want to make clear is like an example is like Mitchellville Road, the sidewalk additions right now, some of that is eminent domain to add the sidewalks because essentially some of the portions of where the sidewalks are private property. And so that's part of how you get that done. So I just wanted to support with a real-time example.
Can I read something instead of asking a question? Is that okay? Sure. Okay. So I'm Kathy Brady. My husband is prior Councilman Dennis Brady.
He could not attend this meeting because it conflicted with a previously scheduled forum with the mayor and the council candidates for the upcoming November 7th Bowie City Council election. 25 years ago, State Highways worked with citizens along the length of US 301 from Harry Nice Bridge to its intersection with US 50 here in Bowie to develop plans for the future roadway. The Harry Nice Bridge was finally replaced. During my husband's time on the council, State Highways presented plans and revised plans for the upgrade of US 301 from Excalibur Road to US 50. The plans would have converted US 301 to a limited access expressway with local traffic on service roads separated from the through traffic, which is what Joe Minor was referring to earlier. The cost in 2015 was approximately $380 million. In 8 years, that estimate has surely risen significantly. If Dennis could have attended, he would have called on State Highways to expand US 301 from Pennsylvania Avenue, Maryland 4 in Upper Marlboro to US 50 in Bowie to 3 lanes minimally to alleviate the poor driving conditions and heavy congestion. These conditions will only worsen due to the continued development in the region if no expansion occurs. We cannot wait for the state to fund the costly conversion of US 301 to a limited access expressway. Finally, he would invite State Highways to meet with the next Bowie City Council to discuss the congestion and poor driving conditions on US 301 in the Bowie vicinity. Thank you.
Comments on my part and then a question. My name's Jeffrey Collins. I live at the Brock Hills subdivision, Upper Marlboro, Route 202, about 1.8 miles west of Route 725, Marlboro Pike. And my subdivision is about 2.5 miles from 301. Over the decades, my family has used Route 301 on an almost daily basis for work and other related activities. And just in terms of some background history, Mrs. Brady spoke about her husband's involvement in advocating for expansion of 301. I did some research a little earlier today in from the Washington Post, a 1994 article in which the reporter touched upon a plan going back to the late 80s, early 90s to create a bypass from Baltimore, 93 miles, all the way to the Harry Nice Bridge. So you had environmentalists as well as the city of Bowie and other communities and politicians that were against the proposal. Hence, what was put in place next was the 2020 301 task force to look at plans, recommendations, issues relative to 301 and what's projected and recommended. And that report indicated, and it was about a 5-year, 6-year study, indicated that by 2020, there would be an additional 500,000, let me just say, about 50,000 plus residents along that 301 corridor. There will be a significant increase in traffic and subsequent development, rampant development, unless the state and local authorities took steps to address the situation. One of the prime recommendations that came out of this task force was expansion of 301, as Ms. Brady indicated, okay, to 3 lanes, okay, from Route 3 starting about 301 at Route 50, all the way to the Harry Neese Bridge. I think that's something that really needs to be addressed. There's a lot of issues here, complicated problems that will not be solved overnight. And I think that we have to work together in order to identify issues and develop a plan and to alleviate these issues along the 301 corridor. And my main issue, and many of us in this room, has to do with the outrageous, stupid, ridiculous, out of sight, rampant, in-your-face development, which is exasperating as a direct result of the piss-poor planning when it comes to the 301 corridor. So thank you for this time, and I'd like to get a response from the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Upwell.
No disagreement.
Okay, there's a lady up front. We're gonna wait for a response. You can get ready.
Well, all I can say is that most of that planning for the development was done before, well before my time. And as Joe stated, it all was within the master plan that the county put forward. But I agree, you know, my whole thing is, you know, infrastructure needs to be assessed better when we're putting forward these developments. So that's definitely something that I look at and when I'm looking at developments proposed specifically in District 4. So just wanted to share that with you.
I concur with your thoughts in terms of making sure that we have enough lanes. I disagree. I mean, I agree with the gentleman here.
Good evening, I'll make this brief. My name is Jody Wildy, and I live in District 6 in the Forest. I live very close to 301, 202. I have a question, I have a concern, but also a question. There's significant development that's going to be going on within the next couple of years, right off of 202, in fact, pretty much in my back door. I testified in January about the development and the concern that there's no plans to widen 202. The majority of the traffic that comes past my development is coming from, let's say, the tip of 202 to 301. In fact, they plan on us doing some development between 725 and 301 and 202, which is going to create a significant amount of chaos. In addition to leading up to 301, there is a train that goes through, and when the train goes through, 301, tip to bottom, is backed up significantly for oftentimes maybe 15 minutes at 5 o'clock in the evening. My concern is that, and I think Kim Taylor brought it up, and perhaps you all can answer this, why is it that at the pleasure of the developers, we have to suffer because they're not putting in any money towards infrastructure that would alleviate a lot of this traffic concerns? So why is it that it cannot be more or less mandated or policy, regulations, whatever, that they contribute a significant amount to the infrastructure that inconveniences us for a lot of development that we don't even want to see happen? In fact, I just read where they're going to be doing additional development on 301. Now, when I moved into my development in 1996, the Balmore North Beach Tree were there, and 301 still hasn't been widened. And oftentimes, if you're on 301 doing 5 p.m. or even in the morning, if you don't get out there at least 30 minutes before you have to be to work or whatever it is that you have to do, you're going to get stuck in traffic. And in the evening, it is absolutely ridiculous. But if you live, I live a couple of stones throw from Jeffrey, you're caught in all that traffic. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the traffic from 301 comes north and south on 202. And I live off of Kent Drive, and this is no exaggeration. Sometimes it has taken me 15 minutes to get out of my development because of the traffic that comes off of 301. And again, my question is, why can't the developers be more accountable or contribute more to the infrastructure if they're making millions of dollars and we're sitting in development for 15 minutes? And then one other thing, again at my doorstep, they're getting ready to develop 116 houses right off of 202, and there's no plan for widening 202.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I can certainly sympathize with you. I've seen it as well, but the developers are only responsible for what they're responsible for in regards to their development. So anything outside of that purview, they're not responsible for that. So they have to put those plans in place when they submit their site plans for the development that they're putting in place, and those roads are the only thing that they're responsible for. The offset or the pieces that are just kind of what I call collateral damage, they're not responsible for that. So it really takes you to share this information with your council member, and so we can work on making sure that that the powers that be understand those roads, some county, some state, can be fixed in other means, in other ways.
The other comment is, the local jurisdiction, in this case, mostly with regard to Prince George's County, they determine the rules of how development proceeds. And every so many years, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, I'm not sure how it is, they review their development ordinances and rules. So when a developer comes in, the rule currently states that, remember someone identified that it's the impact at critical intersections that dictate what a developer need to do by way of improvement, if any. So, and the first man spoke about level of services. So if a development comes in and identify critical intersections, let's say the intersection operate at what we call level service B. The developer can bring in so much development that bring it up to a level service D, which means there's going to be significant degradation in the traffic pattern, but still level service D by the local rules of the ordinances may not require the developer to make any improvements. It's only when it goes over a certain threshold, level service E or F, that triggers now that the developer have to do something. That's part of it. The other part is, if there is a master plan to bring in certain improvements, sometimes developers are allowed to, in lieu of making improvements, contribute to a transportation fund so that a larger improvement can be made. And so to what extent that is followed through on, or whether additional developers are needed to contribute to that, also could cause the delay.
There was one caveat that I forgot. They did a traffic study based on all this development that was going on 202. But that traffic study was done in 1994, where there has been significant development, and that hasn't changed. So what can we do as a community when something like this happens? The traffic study was done 20 years ago. How can we make that change?
So here again, the local jurisdiction, in this case, what Prince George's County developed, determine the rules. Unless they have a rule that says any study that's X number of years old is no longer valid, then they could be required to do an updated study. But if there's no clause that required them to update, they can do a study back in 2000, get approval, and wait for the economy to get right, hold off that development, and then come in later and say, okay, now we're ready to go 10 years later.
That's pretty much what has happened. That's exactly what has happened.
And also, I know several residents have asked me to have traffic studies conducted on certain roads, and I've been able to work with DPWT to make that happen. So, like I said, it's really imperative that you let your council member know what you would like to do, which roads you would like to see a traffic study done.
Thank you.
It's really not a question. The studies have been done, and I've been in Southern Maryland, and I've used 301. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Diana Martin. I live in District 2 off of Bel Air Drive. I moved to Bowie 20 years ago, and the studies for Melford, when I first moved in, were done years ago. And again, studies are paid for millions and millions of dollars and never get done many times. And I think you all know that, so they can keep doing studies. I noticed that there's no accountability. The county, the Bowie blames this person, blames that person. It sounds like everybody's not working together. People haven't heard of things, and yet these studies have been around for years. 301's been worked on. Brandywine is part of PG County. There's a whole big development right off of Route 5, right onto 301 that's been developed. That's PG County also. The left hand's not working with the right hand, and down there with Charles County, they have the same issue. Are the counties working with each other? Is Maryland, I think his name was Holmes, he's a state person. Yes, it did run when the states run it. Bowie wants to give federal money. We're going to have HOV, and we have to pay Maryland 200. That was part of the road that was supposed to be our road in the 70s that went from Baltimore down to Southern Maryland. My mother sits died. We used to say, hey, Mom, we're coming down. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Never happened. So this has been going on, and I don't know who you are with the staffing and planning. You've got the history, and these people need to be educated. And I don't want to hear that I wasn't here. All of us have started a job where someone retired, and you took on their job, but I wasn't here at that time. We hear that so much when we come to meetings. I'm so tired of it. Find out what...
I wasn't using that as an excuse.
Excuse me, I've heard it more than it sounds like one.
It's not an excuse.
Well, then it should not come out of your mouth. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't appreciate the tone that you're using.
I'm not holding it against you. I'm just saying.
No, I'm saying I'm not using it as an excuse.
Because when you say I wasn't here, that's what it means to the rest of us.
Thank you
No,
very
that's
much
not.
for everybody's comments. We're almost right at 8 o'clock. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. Thank the panelists who stuck around. I appreciate that. I'll just make a couple of comments, and that is we want people to be and stay engaged. This is a conversation we would like to continue. I think in the flyers you can reach out to Prince George's citizenswatch.org, which is the email address for our organization. If you want to stay abreast of what's happening in this matter, we will be on top of things, and we will be letting people know. The one thing I takeaway that I did get from this is that there seems to be a development in infrastructure sort of disconnect. In other words, we may have plans where, say, 301 is to be widened, but because that costs a lot of money and it doesn't look like, I'm not sure if it's going to be approved or when, that hasn't happened. And then as a result, we still have development that continues on despite that. So I don't really understand how we're going to break that cycle, and I think that continuing conversation is going to have to deal with that. But if anybody else, I think we're going to close it down now. Thanks again for everybody coming out.
Let's Talk About It is here to communicate, educate, motivate, uplift, and inspire people all over the world See you next time. Let's talk about it.